The question then arises. So, if all of you are ready, we can start reading.
Shall I read?
Yes, please.
The question then arises, and it is the sole real difficulty, for here the intellect falters and stumbles over its own limits. How is this human mind and body assumed? For they were not created suddenly and all of a piece, but by some kind of evolution, physical or spiritual or both. No doubt, the descent of the avatar, like the divine birth from the other side, is essentially a spiritual phenomena, as it is shown in the Gita's Atmanam Srajami. It is a soul birth, but still there is here an attendant physical birth. How then were this human mind and body of the avatar created? If we suppose that the body is always created by the hereditary evolution, by inconscient nature and its immanent life spirit without the intervention of the individual soul, the matter becomes simple. A physical and mental body is prepared fit for the divine incarnation by a pure or great hereditary and descending Godhead takes possession of it. But the Gita, in this very passage, applies the doctrine of reincarnation boldly enough to the avatar himself. And in the usual theory of reincarnation, the reincarnating soul, by its past spiritual and psychological evolution, itself determines and, in a way, prepares its own mental and physical body. The soul prepares its own body. The body is not prepared for it without any reference to the soul. Are we then to suppose an eternal or continual avatar himself evolving? We might say his own fit mental and physical body according to the needs and pace of the human evolution, and so appearing from age to age, yug. In some such spirit, some would interpret the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, first in the animal forms, then in the animal man, then in the dwarf man soul, uh, Vamana, the violent Asuric man, Rama of the axe, the divinely natured man, a greater Rama, the awakened spiritual man, Buddha, and preceding him in time, but final in place, the complete divine manhood, Krishna. For the last avatar, Kalki, only complicates the work Krishna began. He fulfills in power the great struggle which the previous avatars prepared in all its potentialities. It is difficult assumption to our modern mentality, but the language of the Gita seems to demand it. Or, since the Gita does not expressly solve the problem, we may solve it in some other way of our own, as that the body is prepared by the jiva, but assumed from the birth by the Godhead, or that it is prepared by one of the four manas, Katvaro Manavaha of the Gita, the spiritual fathers of every human mind and body. This is going far into the mystic field from which the modern reason is still averse. But once we admit avatarhood, we have always entered into it, and once entered, may as well tread in it with firm footsteps.
Yeah, very interesting para. And he has already discussed this earlier that there are so many things that are coinciding. So, the first thing is the difference between the avatar and the human being. The human being evolves upwards. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
we can hear you very clearly.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because my phone suddenly has gone, seems to have gone dead. So that's why I'm asking.
So we can
Okay.
hear you, but we can't see you. But it is okay. We can hear you very clearly, Ranganath.
Yeah, then I'll continue.
Hmm.
So that he has told us already that the human being is evolving upwards through many, many lives. Okay. Then the avatar is, so human being is climbing to the divine. But in the question of the avatar, the divine is descending into the human being. This is the basic difference. Okay. So now the question is, but there is a essentially the human being is in essence is already divine, but he is covered up with ignorance and he is going slowly upward evolving. Now the question arises, when does the divine descend into a human body? This is a question that Shamir is discussing here. Okay, so it's obvious if you keep this in mind that a human mind with reason cannot exist in a animal. Okay, let's go step by step, then you will see what is meant by this. Saying, is it possible for the consciousness of a cat or a dog to be there in the worm? Not possible, because a cat can do things which a worm cannot. Okay, so in other words, there's a consciousness, evolution of consciousness, which is running parallel to the biological evolution also. So in the worm, the body is built in such a way that there is a great limit to his capacities. In the animal, the what the what the worm cannot do, he can do. And the body of a cat or a dog is far different from that of a worm. So, in other words, the consciousness can enter into a body which is becoming more and more conscious. The body has to be sufficiently developed to be able to accommodate the higher consciousness. Now, similarly, the human being is superior to the animal, but because he has got the biological body has developed a brain which is capable of housing the mental consciousness. So exactly the yogi also, when he is doing, his body has to be fit for the higher consciousness. If his body is very crude, then it has to be prepared. Of course, the soul will do that even while living. Okay? The changes have happened in the body for all yogis. This is the question being discussed here. So, when does the divine descend into a human body? When it is ready. Okay. So that is the question. Can a divine descend into a body which is not yet prepared for it? The answer is very clearly no. Okay. So this being what is being discussed is a very interesting question, and we look at it very carefully. Okay. So I'm reading each sentence. The question then arises, and it is a real soul difficulty. For here, the intellect falters and stumbles over its own limits. How is this human mind and body assumed? How does the divine assume enter into a human body and body? Is it possible? That's what we discussing. Okay. For they were not created suddenly and all of a piece, but by some kind of evolution, physical or spiritual or both. Now that's already giving you a hint here. All evolution of consciousness must necessarily be running side by side, parallel to the biological evolution. The body, as we just now discussed, the body has to be fit for the higher consciousness. The higher consciousness cannot descend into a body which is not fit for it. This is the whole question. Okay. Now, I also remind you that Sri Aurobindo told mother that my body is not fit for the transformation. It is your body which has been prepared, because mother's body was prepared by Ma Saraswati in the mother's womb. Mother's womb, biological mother. Our mother's biological mother's womb the Ma Saraswati had prepared her body. Okay? So now this is what Srimati is discussing. I just give you a preview of mother's body. Now we continue with the discussion. For they were not created suddenly. The body of an avatar is not created suddenly, miraculously. That's what he's saying. So in other words, it has to develop through many, many ages, okay, many, many lives. Then when it is ready, the avatar can descend into it. The divine consciousness can descend into it. For they were not created suddenly all of a piece, but by some kind of evolution, physical or spiritual, both, or both. So there you are. Very clearly, he is giving you a hint, but he is not saying very clearly that the spiritual evolution must necessarily be accompanied parallelly by a physical evolution also. Okay? But it is there, very clear. No doubt the descent of the avatar, like the divine descent from the other side, is essentially a spiritual phenomenon. Okay, it's very, very clear that it's a spiritual phenomenon. As is shown by the Gita's Atmanam Srijami. I am creating my own soul. Okay? It's a soul birth. It's not physical birth, but a soul birth. But still, there is here an attendant physical birth. Very clear. No? There has to be a physical birth also into which the divine soul can descend. How then were this human mind and body of the avatar created? If we suppose that the body is always created by the hereditary evolution, by inconscient nature and its immanent life spirit without the intervention of the individual soul, the matter becomes simple. A physical and mental body is prepared fit for the divine incarnation by pure or great heredity, and the descending Godhead takes possession of it. Okay? If you want only the physical aspect, the physical body being prepared, and that can take place only through heredity. So that's the argument is giving us in the beginning. A physical and mental body is prepared for the divine incarnation by pure or great heredity, and the descending Godhead takes possession of it. But the Gita, in this very passage, applies the doctrine of reincarnation boldly enough to the avatar himself. Okay? So, it is a reincarnation. That means, in other words, many, many lives the avatar also has had. And what was he doing through all those lives? He was preparing the body and consciousness for the divine descent. Now, I just refer you again to one question, and you have to understand that in the correct way. We discussed this last time, I think. Someone asked Srivamdo, you are the avatar, and you have previous lives. What were you doing in those lives? So Srivamdo very laconically, very, very summarily said, carrying on the evolution. Okay. Now, this carrying on the evolution, is it only the avatar who is doing? The answer very clearly is no, because the evolution starts even at the physical level, at the inconscient level it starts. Where is the avatar in the inconscient? So, the carrying on the evolution can be at the highest level of the avatar. It can also be at the inconscient level. Even the worm is carrying on the avatar, the evolution in a certain sense. Okay, that is the discussion being done here. So when Srivamda says I was carrying on the evolution, he was Leonardo da Vinci, he was Augustus Caesar. So they were carrying on the evolution in their little bit, in their own function, they were doing that. So similarly, all of you and me also, we are carrying on the evolution. Okay, because we are furthering the rising of the individual consciousness is rising, but our individual consciousness rising is also contributing to the general universal consciousness. Remember, there is a great similarity, and not only similarity, connectedness between the universe and you. Whatever the universe is doing, it can benefit the individual. Whatever benefit the individual gets from his own progress is a contribution to the universe also. Certainly, your progress has a universal effect. It may be a very small effect, I agree, but still it is a contribution. So keep this in mind. Okay, sir. So the Gita is not saying very clearly that a body miraculously is made by heredity and the divine is descending into it. No, it's not like that. It is the preparation of the body itself through many, many lives. That's why reincarnation has to be absolutely a part of the avatarhood. Okay? The doctrine of reincarnation boldly enough to be avatar himself. And in the usual theory of reincarnation, the reincarnating soul, by its past spiritual and psychological evolution, itself determines and in a way prepares its own mental and physical body. Now note that the key word here is in a way. Okay, so because when there is sufficient development in the being, the soul reviews its own life. Okay, it's a very normally we have in videos we have fast forward, but this is the soul does a fast backward. It reviews its own life and then decides when it is sufficiently developed. When it is not sufficiently developed, it's a mechanical process. The soul just descends into a body and goes on developing slowly. But when the soul is sufficiently developed, it chooses its place of birth and the body where it will take birth. So this is what Swami is saying. The soul prepares its own body. This is not a question of only heredity. Okay? Prepares its own body. The body is not prepared for it without any reference to the soul. And this is true of everybody. When you are sufficiently developed. When you are not sufficiently developed, it's a mechanical process. Okay? So the soul without any reference to the soul. Are we then to suppose an eternal or continual avatar himself evolving? We might say his own fit mental and physical body according to the needs and pace of the human evolution, and so appearing from age to age, yuge yuge. Now, Sriyanda answers 10 lines later on. He says, but the language of the Gita seems to demand it. So there you are, that's the answer. He only asked a question 10, 15 lines below. He says, it's a difficult assumption to our modern mentality. How can the soul prepare the physical body? That's a, it's a difficult assumption for the modern mentality, but the language of the Gita seems to demand it. And we also know that Sriyanda said in many letters, the soul, when after death, the soul in a developed person goes to the soul world. Okay? There's no location, by the way, for the soul world. Huh? There's no location for it. Like there are Brahma Loka, Ananda Loka, and all this, but the psychic world is not located anywhere. It just goes, resumes, reviews its life, and takes a decision where it has to go next. What does it have to gain, and where it chooses where it wants to go. The choosing is not absolutely essential in the beginning, but towards the end of its development, it is there. Okay, the soul does choose the conditions best suited for its next progress. That's what he's saying. So, Swami is asking the question now that then is it done in this way? The human evolution and the biological evolution, can the soul really prepare its own body? Now he is discussing, and after 10 lines, he gives you the answer yes. Okay. In some such spirit, some would interpret the 10 incarnations of Vishnu. First in animal forms, then in the animal man, then in the dwarf man soul, Vamana, the violent Asuric man, okay, Parashurama, Rama of the axe, the divinely natured man, the greater Rama, the awakened spiritual man Buddha, and preceding him in time, but finally in place, the complete divine manhood Krishna. For the last avatar of Kalki only accomplishes the work Krishna began. Now that's very interesting. Note that. Huh? What Krishna has done, Kalki is accomplishing the work that Krishna began. So is that not an admission that I'm completing the work that Sri Krishna did? Because Sri Krishna spiritualized humanity. His function was to spiritualize. Rama's function was to moralize. Okay, he introduced the moral concept. Then Krishna introduced the spiritual concept. Now Srimati is taking it to the supramental concept. So very clearly it's an admission here, okay, that I have completed the work that Krishna began. In fact, Krishna entered his body and helped him with the work. Okay? But the last avatar, Kalki, only accomplishes the work Krishna began. He fulfills in power the great struggle which the previous avatars prepared in all its potentiality. It's a difficult assumption to our modern mentality, but the language of the Gita seems to demand it. Demand what? That the soul prepares its own body. Okay? Or, since the Gita does not expressly solve the problem, we may solve it in some other way of our own, as that the body is prepared by the Jiva, but assumed from birth by the Godhead, or that it is prepared by one of the four Manus. Okay? I will list the Manus, okay? Chatvaro Manavaha of the Gita, the spiritual fathers of every human mind and body. This is going far into the mystic field from which the modern reason is still averse. But once we admit avatarhood, we have already entered into it, and once entered, may as well tread in it. So we will now see what are these 10 avatars, the 7 rishis, and the 14 manavas. Okay, manus. The manava is the plural, manu. Okay, so the 10 avatars we know. Matsya, the first, it's a fish. Then the next is Kurma, the tortoise. We pronounce in India, we pronounce tortoise, but actually it is tortoise. They pronounce it that way. Okay, so the tortoise is both. It's possible on water and land, both. Okay. The next is only on land, boar. Okay, the Varaha. Okay. Next is the Narasimha, lion man. You can see the slow, gradual development. Okay, lion man. He is animal as well as man. Okay? Then you have the Vamana. Now he is man, but he is a dwarfish man, okay? Very small man, not big. The next is the Parashurama. Parashurama is a violent, vital man. Okay? Then he is man, but dominated by the vital. Next is Rama, the mental, moral man. Okay? Then you have Krishna, the divine man. Buddha, the avatar. Buddha was added later on, I understand. But anyway, because this theory is very old. It was there before even the Buddha was born. Then you have the Kalki, which is the future avatar. Okay? So Kalki is the last. And note interestingly that this also I'll have a small discussion with you. Note interestingly that the Kalki is the last avatar. Okay? So when there's in correspondence, there is this question is raised. Someone is telling Sri Aurobindo, you are the last avatar. So then Sri Aurobindo has a little humorous aside, and then it's interesting because if Sri Aurobindo has brought down the supermind, okay, then there is not one avatar, but all the Superman are avatars in that sense. So naturally, Kalki has to be the last one. It fits in so well with the theory of the Superman, because the Superman is clearly an avatar. He can even prepare his own body by his own will, not only by the soul, but own will. Okay. So this is a question being discussed, and these are now we know the chapter heading, the process of avatar. So what is the process of avatarhood? The avatar's body and mind and vital is prepared through many evolutionary lives, and then when it is ready, then the divine can descend into it. But another question arises. But there are so many people who are now ready at a yogic level. So where does the avatar descend? Does the divine descend into all the avatars? No, obviously not. Okay, so even if it has descend, it's very possible that they descend and they are avatars, but unknown to the world. That also is a possibility, that there is no necessity for them to. They do the work silently. Okay, Sri Aurobindo says in one place that the sages sitting on the Himalayas and doing their sadhana are determining the many things in the physical world. So it's very possible for the existence of an avatar who is not known to the world. So these are the thoughts that come into the mind. Because obviously, It's not only one man who suddenly becomes an avatar, who is fit for the descent of the divine, but the divine descends into him who will fulfill his purpose. Okay, so there were so many others also, and but in Sri Aurobindo case, there was this tremendous capacity of the mind. Intellectual was so unbelievably developed, which is not true at all of the avatar of avatars. Okay? Whatever it is, Raman Maharshi and even Ramakrishna, okay, they were not intellectual. They had tremendous spiritual experience, but not intellectual. So here is Sri Aurobindo with tremendous possibilities in the spiritual field, but also a fantastic mental development, okay? Unbelievable. Okay? So the capacity of his intellectuality is absolutely phenomenal. So this is being discussed. So the 10 avatars we have discussed. Then there are 7 rishis. Okay, 7 is referring to the Manavas and the rishis. Okay, Marichi, Atri, Angiras, Pulastya, Kula, Kratu, and Varishtha. These are the 7 rishis. Then there are 14 Manus. Okay, so Manu normally you speak of the original first man, but here the Gita speaks about the 14 Manus. Okay? Swayambhu, Swaroshisha, then Autami. Okay, I've written, but I can't read my own handwriting. Then Raiva, then Tamas, Chakshusha, etc., etc. Dakshina Savarne, okay, Brahma Savarne, Dharma Savarne, etc., etc., etc. Rudra Savarne. These are all the rishis. And the reference to it in the Gita is the 10th chapter, verse 6. Okay. Maharshaya Sapta Purve Chatvaro Manavasatha Madbhava Manasa Jata Yesham Loka Ima Praja. So this is the reference to all the referring to the 7 rishis and the 14 manavas. Okay, so, manus. Okay, so very interesting question, and it has solved many problems. And I'll just go a little aside because it's a very interesting thing. This reviewing of one's life. Okay, I've forgotten the name, but there was a person here. There's a person here who was she was a lady, and she was a Bengali lady, and she was manager in that clothing company which was started by a Britisher. What is it? I've forgotten the name. They make clothes only. Many of our people go and buy the clothes from there. What is that name? I've forgotten the name. Okay, so she was manager there, and they were living with the husband. They were living on the sea beach in Pondicherry. Okay. Then, when the tsunami came, okay, the water started rising, and in a very short time, and they were caught in that house, and the water was rising very sharply. By the way, she told me this herself, but she is not a spiritual person, and she did not understand the implications of what she was saying. Okay, but very clearly, this is what happened. The water started rising very fast, and then she said that something very interesting happened. I thought that I was going to die because the water had come right up to the neck level and it would have gone above, then I would have drowned. But I didn't know swimming. Okay. So suddenly I found myself looking at my life and saying, is there something that I would have liked to have changed in my life? Okay. She said this, but she doesn't know that it's a soul review. Okay. So when the last moment comes, or after death, also that comes. But in this case, it happened before death. There's a fast backward view, and it reviews and evaluates its own life. What are the things that I have learned, and what would I like to learn next? Okay. Then when she was thinking of this, suddenly the water started receding and she did not die. But the experience was so fantastic that she remembered. Mind you, she is not a spiritual person, not interested in yoga. Okay? But she had this experience, which clearly shows that the soul has a choice in the matter. Okay? It reviews its life and it takes birth again by choice. Okay? These conditions will be suitable for me, and you take a birth in a body which is ready for you. Okay? This is the interesting part. Okay? So, what's the time? 8:30. All right?
Who exactly are the Manus? I mean, what level of evolution and
The Manus are the origin of the first men. When the animal evolves into a man, they are the first men. Okay? Actually, there is Manu, he is the first. It's not true. It's not a physical fact. There's no physical Manu. It's symbolic. How can there be a physical Manu? I very clearly, you are half animal, then you are semi-animal, then you are a violent man. So it's a concept that the transition from the animal to man is a Manu. It is represented by the Manu. It's not a physical thing. It's a symbolic thing. Okay? We have the Manu Smriti also. It's a spiritual scripture where the human values are enunciated. Okay, so I don't know what the time is. It's 8:30. So if you have got 10 minutes, then maybe we can. Yeah, then maybe we can read the next para. How big is it? Let us see. Oh, it's the last.
last para?
You can read it. We have got 8 minutes, so read it.
Shall
So,
I?
Jasmine,
Shall I read?
next. Yes, please go ahead.
There, the Gita's doctrine of avatarhood stands. We have had to advert to it at length in this aspect of its method, as we did to the question of its possibility, because it is necessary to look at it and face the difficulties which the reasoning mind of man is likely to offer to it. It is true that the physical avatarhood does not fill a large space in the Gita, but still it does occupy a definite place in the chain of its teachings and is implied in the whole scheme. The very framework being the avatar leading the Vibhuti, the man who has risen to the greatest heights of mere manhood, to the divine birth and divine works. No doubt, too, the inner descent of the Godhead to raise the human soul into himself is the main thing. It is the inner Christ, Krishna, or Buddha that matters. But just as the outer life is of immense importance for the inner development, so the external avatarhood is of no mean importance for this great spiritual manifestation. The consummation in the mental and physical symbol assists the growth of the inner reality. Afterwards, the inner reality expresses itself with greater power in a more perfect symbolization of itself through the outer life. Between these two, spiritual reality and mental and physical expression, acting and returning upon each other constantly, the manifestation of the divine in humanity has elected to move always in the cycles of its concealment and its revelation.
This is that completes the process of the avatarhood. So now we are very clear what is how the avatar is determined. First of all, through evolution in many lives, and then finally, when the body, mind, life are sufficiently developed, first of all, the consciousness has to develop. Then the divine can descend into that body, and there may be many people who have got now the capacity for the divine descent. In fact, many yogis, the divine does descend into them, but they are not all avatars, nor are they known to humanity. So this is the question that has been done. So naturally, the next question arises: then, what does the avatar do? What is the purpose of avatarhood? That he has already told us. There are 3-4 things that the avatar does. One is to bring down and correct the course of evolution. Okay, carrying on the evolution. The Gita also says, "Dharma sansapanarthaya." Okay, sambhavami yuge yuge. So for the establishment of the dharma, that is the first function. Second function is to show man how to do yoga and go upwards. Okay? And the third function of the avatar is the divine vibrations that are emitted in the physical world, so that everybody who is ready can benefit. So these are the 3 things. So and obviously the next question is, how does the divine work in the physical, and what is the work he does? Okay? So that's the next chapter. The divine birth and divine works. What do they do? How do they do? So that's the next chapter. Okay. It is a very interesting chapter. The process of avatarhood. First of all, what is the purpose of avatarhood? 3 things which we just now discussed. Okay. And the next is the process of avatarhood. The process is not something miraculous at all. It is the natural evolution and the preparation of the body through biological evolution. The body has to be sufficiently developed. As we discussed also very clearly, animal levels also, there is a more and more complexity. The biological complexity goes on increasing. There are animals with only 1 sense. There are animals with 2 senses. Obviously, the capacity of the body is increasing. Then there are animals with 3, 4, finally with 5 senses. Obviously, the one who has got 5 senses is biologically, evolutionarily more developed than the one who has got only 1. So there is a parallel biological evolution also, which is necessary for the higher consciousness to occupy that body. Then, when the biological evolution is complete in that sense, then the divine consciousness can start coming in. So, mental development first and then spiritual development. So, very interesting process, told us so clearly how it takes place. Okay. So, another one thing which we'll read next time, the divine birth and divine works. Sri Aurobindo mentions Christ, Buddha, Chaitanya. He also mentioned Rama and Krishna, but he has never mentioned Muhammad as an avatar. Okay? Of course, Islam himself, they don't admit avatarhood. He was a messenger of God. He was a messenger of God.
And
Prophet.
Christianity, Jesus Christ?
They don't have the concept of avatarhood at all in Christianity. They deny it. They say that it is impossible for man to be divine.
So for them it is okay, but what Sri Aurobindo has mentioned them as an avatar, Jesus Christ?
Of course, Christ very frequently. In the synthesis, very
Yes,
frequent.
in many places. In many places, na Rangada?
Yes, many places.
Ah, that's what I have.
There's no doubt about it.
We are so rigid with our thinking that often it becomes difficult for us to accept this. But it is true. That is how
Yes,
for
that's
us,
right.
as Aurovindonians, at least we have to accept it. As we have chosen it.
That's right. But one interesting fact about Christ is that it's not European, it's Asian. Just remember, all that spiritual development seems to be taking place only in Asia and not in Europe. It's an interesting, but it's worth noting. Okay.
Okay, Orva Rangada, Orva Rangada.
Thanks,
Thank you, Rangada.
Yeah.
Merci, Baba.